Okay, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Super Z, the Marketing Director at 2W Technologies. Here with me today, I've got Sam, who's our Epicor Practice Director, and Zack, who's our Epicor Tools Practice Manager. We are here today to be discussing time to get moving to the Kinetic UI. For those of you who are not familiar with us, 2W Technologies is the largest Epicor partner globally. We also are a managed service provider and an IT solutions provider. We're one of Microsoft's most innovative partner. We've currently to date have earned 4 solutions competencies and 1 specialty. You can see a list there of some of our main technologies. You can also visit us at 2wtech.com to see more about what we're about. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sam, who's going to get us going.
All right. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm really happy to be here with you today to share a little bit of what our team here at 2W has learned, and that can hopefully provide you and your organization with a head start on their Kinetic UI transition journey. Hopefully, you all are aware, or you may have heard, that effective in Kinetic release 2026.1, coming in about May of 2026, the Smart Client and the Classic UI will no longer be supported. What that means is after that date, all users will be using the Kinetic user interface in a web browser. If it sounds like 2026, May of 2026 is a long ways away, 14, 15 months from now, it is, but there's quite a bit of work for some organizations to do, especially those that have been on the Kinetic ERP or one of its predecessors, Epicor 10, 9, etc., for a long time. You probably have a lot of what today we call unique business components, or UBCs, that are an important part of your business and of your users' experience with the Kinetic ERP. That being said, 2 specific types of UBCs, what we generally refer to as screen customizations and dashboards, are areas that are going to require some special attention from your development group to help prepare for that upgrade. That's the area that we're going to focus on during today's presentation, specifically kind of some tips and tricks and best practices that Zack and his team have learned over the past 3 years or so of working with our clients to help them transition from the Classic UI to the Kinetic UI. A little bit more about Zack. As Sue mentioned, Zack Williams is the Epicor Tools Consulting Practice Manager here at 2W. Zack, for those of you who know him or have worked with him, is extensively knowledgeable on the Kinetic ERP in general, but specifically on this area of expertise. Zack and his team have probably spent several thousand hours working on projects like the ones that are ahead of all of you who have either Kinetic UI screen customizations to uplift or dashboards to uplift to the Kinetic UI. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Zack Williams.
Hi, thanks, Sam. Hi, everybody. See some familiar names out there. A lot of people, though. So I'm going to try to get off of PowerPoint here, because I'm sure most of you would rather just see us do some stuff in the software rather than PowerPoint. Might jump back and forth a little bit, but okay. Sam gave a good intro. When we talk about Classic, Kinetic, what does that mean? Classic is that previous E10 early versions of Kinetic UI, written on the .NET platform, only runs from your Smart Client. So people have to have a local client installed to run any of these screens. So stuff like this should look familiar. Kinetic is the new UI. So Kinetic's going to run out of web browsers, make your access a lot more universal to your users. It also moves a lot of the core security and logic in the program totally server side. So that was always kind of a risk with classic screens, is you could customize them, but you could expose business objects. Not the most secure method to run your client. So Kinetic is really a pure UI interface, where we're sending most of the business logic and core customization things back to the server. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Okay, so when we talk about these customizations, what are we even looking for? Like, how do we know how to get started on any of this? So we probably have a mixture of people on the call right now that are SaaS clients with Epicor. So you may already be familiar with the web client, probably still have access to the smart client, can switch between the two of them. Then we also have on-prem server users as well. So some of you might be a little further behind in your version. You might not have even seen some of the classic screens. So there's tools for both sides. So SaaS users, because we're constantly upgrading Pilot and Live, have the unique business component dashboard. That dashboard looks through your customizations and gives you a list of things that we can take a look at. So let's take a look at this. So as a SaaS user, you have this configuration upgrade dashboard. Menu name, unique business component dashboard. Okay. So it's kind of sectioned off, shows all of our VAQs, ports, VPNs, things like that. We'll talk about it towards the end. Some of these things we don't even have to worry about, though, for our Kinetic conversion process. Again, we're only talking about the user interface, or the facade of these screens in the most part. So today we're going to focus on a few key things that we'll have to worry about from an upgrade issue, so that we can run purely in a web browser, because that's the end goal here. We want to get everything uplifted to Kinetic. So all we need is the web browser to run Kinetic. Big one to touch on are dashboards. So dashboards, most of us probably have some custom dashboards out there. And if we've made those, they exist purely in our isolated systems. We've never lifted them to Kinetic. So even as Epicor's transition screens, your unique dashboards have been transitioned. So how do we get those to Kinetic? And this should be the only time I look at a classic screen right now, because I just want to highlight our first tool here. So within our existing dashboard designer, and if you've ever built a dashboard, you should be familiar with this screen. And here's all of our classic layout, everything we've built for this. But when we go to deploy it, for several versions now, I think this even goes back to versions of 10.2. Typically, when we deploy the dashboard, we're just hitting deploy classic application up here. That gives us our classic dashboard, and then we can use that and put it on a menu item. What we also have available to us here is our classic deployment. It's down at the bottom. We have a generate application. So deploying or previewing will do this, but this actually builds the Kinetic app on your server then. So here's that same dashboard. I've designed it all in the classic designer. All I've had to do is generate application, and now I have a Kinetic screen. So let's get out of this. And once we do this, then we have the full Application Studio tool set available to us. So Application Studio, if you haven't heard that. So in classic screens, you could go into developer mode and you could open up a customization, and you could, there's some .NET tool set tools. You could add text boxes and write C# code and do other things. So now with Kinetic, everything is going to go through the Application Studio designer tool. So that lets us do the same things. You can add those text boxes, move things around, and configure the screen to our liking. So before we do anything in a dashboard, though, we need that base application that we can customize, and the steps we just took here, the generated application has made that available. So like I said, let's get rid of classic here. I don't think we're going to need that anymore. Let's jump to our web client now. So here's our new Kinetic web client. And from here, open Application Studio. So this will show us all of our base applications that are in the system. So order entries here, customer trackers here, quote entry, everything's here. It's all base. Our customizations will also be here. Employee dashboards will also be here. We'll look at the shipping dashboard I just made. Again, another key benefit of Kinetic is a lot of these grid views have these filter panels. We can live filter on. We don't have to use the options and then go to filter and get a separate screen. A lot easier to manipulate our grid views throughout the system. You'll see here I have unique prefix here for dashboards, UI, DBD. I've got a couple of other things set up for this already. So I see some additional custom layers here. But let's go ahead and just open up our base layer. So first screen we're going to see is the application map. It's going to show us, essentially tabs, or we're going to call them pages in Kinetic, as we navigate through the screen. In Classic, another hiccup with development is you have to make your changes, close customization, reopen the screen, and that's how you tested if what you use works. So from Application Studio, you have a preview button. Force me to make a layer name. Customizations are done in layers in Kinetic, so we can stack those layers. If we want to isolate changes to specific layers, not going to get too into the weeds on that today, though. Once I have a layer, I can preview it right away. I can save my changes, preview. Okay. Converting our Kinetic, our classic dashboards to Kinetic. First thing we're going to notice is instead of a filter panel, we get these slide outs. Personally, I don't like the slide out. I find it a little hard to work with. You close it, it's filtered my results, but I like seeing what was put there in the first place. So with Application Studio, we can manipulate how all of that works. So I have that same dashboard now. But here, instead of a slide out when I refresh the screen, I have my more traditional tracker panel or filter panel. So again, in Kinetic now, I don't have to hit refresh all the time. I can just change my filters up at the top here. Filters my screen down here. A lot of that design work I've done in the Classic Designer comes over automatically. I can see highlighting. I have publish subscribe things down here so that I can look at my on-hand locations as I flip through an order. See, I have a good example. Here, you see highlighting rules here. So for late POs, it's still highlighted red. So all all of this is still possible in Kinetic. A lot of this is going to come over automatically when you convert that. Now, I highlighted doing it through the classic screen. Eventually, that may go away. Through Application Studio, there are wizards to create from scratch applications. I'm not going to get into that because the converted dashboards are a great tool for you to start learning the Application Studio because it's done a lot of the work for you already. So let's go back to App Studio and look at a layer here. Because I've converted this on the left-hand side, we're going to see data views. Data views are familiar from Classic. It's made a data view for each of my BAQs in my dashboard. It's made a separate one for my filters. New concepts here are going to be events. So events are when I do something, what event occurs. When I load the screen, a load event happens. When I click a button, an event happens. So events are here. Data rules are here. Data rules, again, also in Classic. A lot of highlighting of things, making things read-only are buried in data rules. Our layout, it's our application map here. So might touch on some of this a little bit later, but again, I want to highlight if you make your dashboards this way and use that conversion process, you have kind of a pre-made custom app that you can modify and work with as a test case for a lot of these. Yeah, so so again, if you launch an initial app and you have that slide out and you're like, I really don't like these slide outs, rest assured, we can make the screens look like they used to with the traditional tracker panels. Again, App Studio just lets us expand on that even more. So we can start doing things like adding buttons. I call up our sales order pick list automatically, and we can print our reports directly from our dashboards. You could do this stuff in Classic a lot easier in Application Studio. So again, we want people to be excited about moving to Kinetic. This isn't just a hassle, but they're changing everything on us, and they're putting us through all this work. This is a real opportunity to review our customizations and make things better. Okay, so let's go back to our unique business components again. What else do we have here? So dashboards is going to be a bit. But what else is out there that's Classic? So if we look under menu items, this will show us all of our menu items in the system. If we look at the type code here, some of these we can quickly identify as Classic with the C. There's other things we can look for, but we can quickly see menu options that are Classic only. Some of these are Kinetic only with a K. What's going to be here? Well, we have custom dashboards. Those only existed in your system as a customization. Reports is another big one. So if we have BAQ reports out there, we may have just launched those. When we made them, it makes a menu item for it. But again, Epicor doesn't know that when they've recreated screens. Those are custom to our system. So it's available to us. So BAQ Report Designer, and this is available in Classic. If you've built BAQ reports, that name should sound familiar. I have a report I've made out there in my Classic. A lot of times I would test it from the Actions menu, and I'd get to see, do my options and my filters work? Same thing from our Overflow menu or Actions menu in the top right here. Instead of previewing the Classic screen, I can preview the application. And just like our dashboard designer, this goes out there. And if the Kinetic app doesn't exist already, it's now built this app for us. And again, same thing, I can verify my options are all there, my filters are all there. Everything looks good. And once I've done that, application, the application's available on Application Studio. So I'm going to get too creative in my names here, but same thing here. I can see UI RPT for my reports. I can open up the base layer on that. Let's go ahead and do that. And I don't need to do anything at this point, both with the dashboard and with the report. I don't need to go to Application Studio for anything. They are available just to add to menu items at that point, but if I want to do anything. So I have a pre-made layer here. I can see all my layers and all my revisions here if I wanted to. So in this case, I wanted to make this a default Excel report. And I think we all have those. We have reports we've formatted specifically for Excel output. And usually you have to go to the top of the screen, pick your output method, select Excel, and then preview it or run it. But I don't want to do that. I just want to do it. So, so in App Studio, we can start customizing and do things like default the output path. Do you need to know how to code to do this? Not really. I mean, a lot of this is going to be widget based. We're going to go back to events. You make a new event and it starts fresh. And the first thing it wants to know is a trigger. So I can look at existing events. Do I want to do it before or after an event, like saving or opening the screen? Or just want to replace entirely what an existing event does. I can override it. And I made this one already. So to default in that Excel output, what do I got to do? I made an event. I chose an existing event I wanted to go after. What do I want to go after? I want it to go after the base load event. What do I want it to do? You can bring in, these are all of our widgets we can drag in. In this case, I just want to update an existing row. I'm going to pick the field I want to update, which is my parameter. It's my render format. And I said, make it Excel. That's it. So now it knows after I load an event, do a row update, what field, what's the value, and that's done. We'll circle back around to some more App Studio stuff in a little bit, but again, a lot of this is going to be widget based and just dragging and dropping things in, condition statements, message boxes, other things. We just drag those widgets in. You know, if you're used to that with BPMs, you know, it's applied on the UI side now. Okay, so dashboards is a big one. Custom reports, big one for converting. What else do we got? Go back to our unique business component dashboard. I could go through all the menu items here, and you know, you can identify, you know, some classic things from this column, but I don't want to do all that work. I'd rather just go to this page and just show me all my classic customizations that I have, and this just filters that list for us. Even further, I can see, is that on a menu item? So this is going to be the core of your upgrade projects, probably, is finding your customizations to order entry, to quote entry, to that someone built 10 years ago, 15 years ago. You don't even know what's custom out there. All right. This is going to tell us. We have a classic customization. It's on a menu item. Those are the things we're going to want to focus on. Sorry, I'm going to burn through some more slides here. So we find these on the unique business components. I don't really know if I use this screen or not. What else do we have available to us? So another tool that on-prem and SaaS users have that Epicor snuck in, I think in 2023 maybe, is activity tracking. So under system management, we have these two new menu items: activity type maintenance and activity tracking detail. Activity type maintenance. What do we have? BAQs, BPMs, menus, report styles, functions. We're going to focus on menu items and report styles, but what does this do? Well, I can enable this. I can say how long, retention days, 45 days, and I can start keeping a log then and seeing how many times a menu is clicked on. So I can prioritize screens that I need to uplift. I can see if something is never used. So here we can see menu name, activity count, when was last updated, is it a classic or is it a meta UI? Meta UI, you'll see in place of Kinetic. That's what it looks like on the server file side. So I start getting that activity count. If I hit log details here, that's in my activity tracking detail then. I can see even more information. I can see, as I look at those menu tracking, let's turn this on, I can start seeing who clicked on that, who's using this. So now I have a log of users that I can ask for input when I start uplifting those classic screens. Now, classic screen customizations are going to come in a wide variety. You know, we're going to have simple things. We just added UD fields, added fields that weren't visible before to a screen. Those things will be fairly simple. Again, Kinetic UI, it's a lot of drag and drop with widgets and just pointing to the field you want. The more complex portions are going to be, you know, we have all this custom code on our script page. We're not even sure what it does anymore. So those are the things we're going to have to dive a little deeper on, and those are the things we're going to get out of screen customizations too. Because again, a lot of that heavy use of custom code is things we probably should have been putting on the server side in the first place. So we're going to move that stuff. We can still do all the same things. We're going to move it. We're going to move it to BPMs. We're going to move to functions. Functions, some of you might not be as familiar with, similar to the BPM layout, except it's not event driven. So functions, we can schedule functions to run at any time, or custom logic. We can tie those functions to button clicks on our screens. So that's things like that is where we're going to move a lot of that custom code is to functions. We're going to say, okay, pick an event. After that event, call this function. And then we can pass in fields from our screen into the function and run our business logic or bring back values from that function. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the screen customizations because, again, this is an opportunity to really evaluate our systems. You know, what are the things that have bogged down our system for the last few years? Where have we added things and like order entry takes 3 minutes to save now? you know, we've probably over customized. What was this doing? What was the original intent? So this is an opportunity to really look at your system and see what do we need to customize and use things like activity tracking. Who's using this? And talk to our end users again. There also might be new functionality in Kinetic. You know, the screen might just do what we previously wanted it to do. So we don't need the customization at all. So we want to save time for questions. I know there's a lot of questions coming in here. I just want to wrap up. So we've looked at dashboards, reports, classic screen customizations. What do everything else? I have 200 BPMs. Am I going to have to rewrite all those? Nope. nope, BPMs are all server-side logic. Those should port over, as much as any upgrade. There might be some minor changes involved, but that's not affected by Kinetic, essentially. The core business objects have not changed. Reports themselves, my custom sales order acknowledgement, my custom quote, not affected by the Kinetic uplift. Again, might be standard upgrade things we have to change, tweak our invoice here and there, but we don't have to start from scratch on that. And then if you are using functions already, again, functions are server-side. Don't have to rewrite any of that. So really our core focus is on those dashboards, reports, and classic screen customizations. We can probably jump into the Q&A portion.
Okay.
Yeah,
A
absolutely.
few questions here. Excuse me. We are on 2024.1.13, and there are some forms that are not available in Kinetic UI. Will it be necessary to upgrade to 2026 to get those Kinetic UI forms?
So I would need to know specifically what those are, but my initial answer is no. If the form is not there in 2024.2 but what release did you say you're on right now? Sorry, I might have missed that in the conversation there.
2024.1.13.
Okay. Of course, I want to know the specifics, like what form is it? If it's again, there may be something that may be a custom form, like for example, UD maintenance, or perhaps somebody was even using the SDK module in a prior release and defined a custom business object. That's another matter. But again, the specifics matter. Generally speaking, if it was there in 10.2.700, it's there in Kinetic, from ABC code maintenance to, I don't know, what begins with Z on the Epicor menu. I can't think of anything, but generally, if there was a screen there for it in Classic, there's a corresponding screen in Kinetic, and I can't think of an exception.
Yeah, and that's an extra challenge, for some of our on-prem people in the room, is the SaaS customers. They've been getting constant upgrades for the last 3 or 4 years. Every 6 months they get the latest and greatest version, so they don't have to worry about some of the stuff. And yeah, every version there's been a couple more screens that have been converted to Kinetic. So the plus and minus of that, though, is as an on-prem, you can still upgrade to any of those versions at any point in time, and you still have access to the smart client. So you can run a Classic and Kinetic screen in parallel with each other for a longer amount of time and more easily than some of the SaaS customers. So one other thing I was going to highlight, in menu maintenance, you can usually tell, is there a Kinetic version of the screen? Because you'll see both a Classic and a Kinetic application with a URL attached to it. So that's a quick way to verify if the Kinetic screen is available.
Next question has a question, and then somebody else commented on it. So I'm going to read you both, Zach and Sam. Presently, Kinetic dashboards do not export well to Excel. What is being done to correct this? And then someone added, related to this question, I've had issues getting all data to pull in when there are multiple rows of data. A lot of time information is getting cut off. Do one of you want to address that?
It probably depends on the version. Earlier versions, that there was a lot of result paginating. So like to keep things moving quicker, the screen only loads the first 100 records or whatever you see on screen. And then as you scroll, it starts loading more records. Yeah, that's nice, as I'm working on screen, but it caused issues with exporting it to Excel or wanting to see mass data sets. So I can't speak specifically to the screen, but as new versions have come out, I know that's something they've addressed, and both importing and exporting from Excel, Epicor has recognized that as a user need. So that should improve. If If you're not on the latest version, later version should be better. If you are on the latest version, maybe we have to look at exactly what screen it is, but that should improve.
And that actually brings up a really good point. Like from our collective experience with Kinetic, going back to Kinetic, well, truly Kinetic was essentially in preview mode in 10.2.700, both Application Studio and the few select Kinetic UI screens. They were, for all intents and purposes, unusable in 10.2.700. And for that matter, they were barely usable in many cases in Kinetic 2021.1.2. And really, until we got to, in my opinion, 2023.2, Kinetic UI and Application Studio were really not ready for prime time. So I guess spinning that back around into if you're experiencing issues with Kinetic UI, and that's a very broad statement, we're recommending get to at least 2023.2. And again, if you're doing an upgrade, there's no, again, obviously, if you're a SaaS customer, you're already at 2024.2, not a problem. But for on-prem customers or customers who are in control of what release they are running, before you really start any serious Kinetic UI uplift efforts, get to at least 2023.2 and preferably to the current release. I mean, the tools and the UI keep getting better with each release.
Right. So I'm going to skip ahead because there was a comment and then a question. I think it's addressed. It's related to what you're talking about. So Mark had wrote, we have been using OData in Excel to export 𝐫𝐞s to Excel. It works very well, more seamless than copy and paste from Epicor. So that was the comment, which I think we had a question that said copy and paste functions is not friendly in Kinetic screens. How is this addressed? We're on the latest version.
It depends on the specifics. And again, the release matters, the number of records in question, and pagination of records being returned to the Kinetic screen matter. Those are all factors. So, from a general statement point of view, probably a few hundred records are probably going to export a lot better than a few thousand, which again goes back to fundamental application design. If you're exporting a year's worth of part tran records without any filtering in a dashboard, you might want to rethink that design. Whereas if you're working with a more manageable hundreds of records, not thousands or tens of thousands or millions, you're probably on the right track. And I know that's a very general statement, but the details do matter here.
All right, next question. Is there a preferred browser that works best?
So we use both Edge and Chrome. Officially, Epicor says any modern browser, any modern OS. So Chrome, latest versions, Edge, latest versions, Safari, latest versions. If you're a Mac OS or iOS user, all of those are supported. I don't know, Zach, what's your go-to? It is a little bit of a preference thing.
Yeah, I mean, I use Edge and have had very few problems with it. Does bring up another point. Kinetic screens will run through the smart client. It is not ideal. So what that does is essentially Epicor built their own browser and embedded it within the smart client to run Kinetic screens. Microsoft and Google make better browsers. So when you're testing, when you're developing, working through the web client is going to be a better experience for users and developers. But yes, as long as you're on some kind of Chromium browser, you should be good.
Is there an end of support date for Epicor 10?
we'd need to know what release of. So there is no end of support date per Epicor policy. However, there is a support lifecycle policy, and if you go to Epic Web and search for lifecycle, just the word lifecycle, you'll get a link to the document that explains it. But in short, every Epicor release, and again, 10 is not a release. It was 10.0.700, I believe, was the only 10.0 release. Then that was the next subsequent release, I think, was 10.1.200, maybe. But again, typically on about a 6-month cadence going back 10 years. Each release, and the current release today is Kinetic 2024.2, is actively supported for 24 months after its GA or general availability date. So new software comes out, it's actively supported for 24 months. And then it moves into what's called sustaining support. And sustaining support is a much lower level of support. There's very few releases and updates made and minimal bug fixes. However, Epicor does not officially ever, like as far as I know, Vista 803 is still supported. It's just on a sustaining support model. So again, to say end of support, I don't know that Epicor actually enforces a policy on that, but it is a best effort thing. There's probably 2 people in the world that can help with technical support on Vista version 4, for example.
And since 2002, all new functionality has been written specifically for Kinetic UI. So like process MRP, they came out with this include only parts of activity or min safety checkbox last year sometime, which can greatly reduce your MRP processing time. You do a regen, only available on the Kinetic screen. Classic still works, but new features do not.
Okay, next question. If we do not have an in-house source of support for creating dashboards or report writing, will the web version be easier to learn or access?
I would say no. It's about the same. Like if you didn't have a resource who could use classic UI development tools to modify the classic UI, an equivalent level of skill is required, I would say, with Automation Studio and Kinetic UI. I don't think it's patently easier.
Okay, it looks like we just have 1 or 2 more here, unless more come in the last minute. What is different in menu maintenance as it relates to Kinetic UI?
So
Zach, do you want to talk about that a little?
Sure. Yeah, I briefly threw it up here before. A lot of similarities. So we can still see our main menu items. We can still see the breakdown in the tree. Got a custom one here. It's really just again, it's getting used to the interface more than anything else. The launching of Kinetic customizations, or it would be new if you haven't done that before, so it's separate. Classic customizations, and again, we talked about it a little bit. We can layer customizations in Kinetic as opposed to Classic, so I could have multiple custom layers applied to a screen at one time. So that's why we'll see it as a search screen with these checkboxes rather than just a drop down. For increased security reasons, menu security maintenance has been detached from menu maintenance. So they're 2 separate screens. So giving a user access to one does not implicitly give them access to the other. So they have that division of security from menu maintenance. Other than that, one nice feature, again, like if you've ever done anything like customized customer tracker, for customer entry. You know, it exists 10 different places in the menu tree, and you got to kind of remember where they all are and sort through all of them. So we do have a menu search now, where I could go and find all of my customer screens. And now I can flip through those, you know, from a single screen without having to dig through all the tree view, remember where all that is. Other than that, I mean, it's essentially the same, except for working with it.
You mentioned being more secure. How is the web-based version more secure than the classic application?
So when I was talking about that, when we have a classic customization, you could write all this business logic code in the script editor. You could call business objects, and you could you know, work with server-side code directly from the screen. From a security standpoint, a savvy enough user could get around just opening the screen, and you could just open up the screen and see the background code, and technically somebody could change that code on you directly from a user interface without having access to things like BPMs and functions. They could go in and write code to that script if they wanted to. So Kinetic can't write that code in the application studio. We have to go out and use those external tools like functions and BPMs. Now, Sam, do you have anything to add to that?
No, not at the moment.
Okay.
I was actually paying attention to the Q&A, trying to keep up with the flow.
I think we just have one more question. I used to use the client tracing tools in Classic UI to debug. What tools are available in Kinetic Browser UI to help me do those same things?
So there's a couple of things. Within a screen itself, there's a debug tool that we can turn on. And as I start doing things and bringing my customer, I'll start seeing logs here. So this will tell me things like events that are being called on the application studio side, other things like that. Sometimes it can be a little obscure. So in that case, again, if I'm running from a browser, most browsers come with their own developer tool setting. Usually if you hit F12 on your keyboard, this will bring up this tool. In any browser, this isn't an Epicor thing specifically, but same thing. As I start doing things on the screen, make sure you flip to this network setting if you haven't, but I can start seeing my traces similar to how I did in a trace log. So I can see the method being called at the top here. I can see the business object being called. I can see my data set payloads both before and after. So this is going to be your primary tracing tool, is using the built-in developer tools within your web browser.
I've just got two. Are you done with that one, Zach? Are you?
Yep.
Okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't cutting you off. Can I upgrade my test environment to Kinetic to start testing our customizations?
So that is a question to talk about with your IT infrastructure provider. And again, the specifics of an upgrade, so they're going to vary substantially depending where and how you're deployed. Again, let's, for example, say if you're on 10.2.700 currently and you're deployed on-prem, you're going to want probably new versions of SQL Server and new versions of the server operating systems, along with .NET Framework and other components. So the answer is yes, but the specifics of that depend a lot on your environment. For example, if you're already running Kinetic 2024.1 on-prem, the underlying infrastructure requirements, specifically .NET Framework and SQL Server versions, OS versions of the application server, are much closer. So it would be easier in those cases. But yeah, the answer is yes. And if you need help with those, of course, we're a phone call away to help you with that. That's what we do.
And from a licensing standpoint, that's permitted as well. You can have an upgraded test environment on the same license as your current.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. Good point.
Okay, last question. I think I mean it this time. Where is the option to limit Application Studio access to a user?
It's still tied to the same setting as classic customization. I'm just going to find the exact name here. Customized privileges. So that turns off both the developer tool for classic screens and turns off the option for Application Studio within the screen itself. Just quick point on that. So if you are a developer and you have that privilege, you don't have to go into developer mode to open the screen anymore. You can just open the regular screen, and as long as you have those privileges, Application Studio will be available directly from the menu. So you don't have to switch back and forth between developer mode.
Okay,
and
awesome.
Zach, while you're there, maybe just to point out what's available to a user, even a non-developer user, from the personalization tools in Kinetic UI, just quickly, because a lot of use cases for customizations actually just involve hiding unused features.
Yep. So yeah, so and again, back to the user account settings, as long as you have allow personalization checked, you should have a personalization option in your overflow menu. First thing, if I just do it from the main menu here, it's going to show me all these panel cards that are on this specific screen. So I don't care about FSM. I don't care about credit cards. I don't care about commissions, tax. I can just use this slider panel, save it, and now from a personalization standpoint, I don't have to even see that stuff on my screen. So it's gotten rid of all those panel cards for me. The other key place of personalization is on a grid view. I can personalize columns. I can see all the columns that are available and turn those on and off as well. If you've done that in Classic, you know that always forces you to clear your screen and reload your record. Now you can do it live without having to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. Sorry to take you on a detour that wasn't in the Q&A, but
if there's anything else to highlight. So unfortunately, Epicor has cut back and let you change your color schemes and everything. They want their software to look more universal across the world. So you can't make all your screens purple and gold and blue anymore. So you're stuck with it. Unless you figure out how to do it on the back end with like CSS or something like that.
there probably is a way.
Yeah.
It's just more obscure.
Yeah.
Guys, great presentation. For those of you that are still on with us right now, we are looking for feedback. We know that this topic in particular, the Kinetic UI, there's so much information and questions out there. So if you're interested in seeing more of these type webinars on that particular topic, it would be great if you could just drop me a note with some specifics on what you'd like us to cover, or what areas of concern you still have. My email is just Sue, SUE 2wtech.com. If you just want to drop me a quick email, I'll gather all that information. Our team will talk, and we'll let you know if we're able to do a few more of these to kind of help. All right. Well, thanks again for joining us. If you want a copy of the presentation or a copy of the recording, also drop me an email. I'd be happy to make sure you get both. Thanks so much, guys, for your presentation, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody, for attending.